let me ask you the question. You can either answer it on your Padlet, and if you look in your Canvas, you'll see it there. Or you could just raise your hand and answer it that way. Either way works for me. Describe in your own words how someone can establish so much power over an entire population that they can achieve something like we saw in the HBO series Band of Brothers. How is that possible? Eli, I saw your hand raised first.
I don't have any internet.
Okay, so write in Microsoft Word then.
Huh?
Or you can write your notes in Microsoft Word then. Angel, what you got? The power of what though? What'd you say? Okay, so just having the power of a dictator. What you got, Paulina? Of fear. Fear can create something as powerful as what you saw right there, right? Making you nervous to speak out against your government. Having enough of a backing, having enough of a following so that individuals are willing to follow something as terrible and destructive as that. Chris, you had your hand raised?
To make people like love his image, what he does.
Okay. So basically, have an ideology that individuals agree with, and have them agree with it so much so that now it's their ideology as well. Right? So kind of like in the idea, think of religion. You have similar probably religion to your mom and dad, or maybe your grandma and grandpa, or something like that, right? Or Christianity is the largest religion on earth, followed secondly by the Muslim religion. So, or Islam. So, with that being said, having the same ideals as the individual you're following allows you to be complacent when they decide to do something. Anyone else? Lila?
They're pretty much brainwashing everyone that they're following into thinking that what they're doing is good and it's like benefiting everyone that follows them.
So brainwashing, using manipulation, using desperation, making somebody believe that what you're doing is the right thing, using propaganda, using the media, using something against the people to the point where you'll believe it, right? Think of the idea, remember we were talking about yesterday. Right now you guys aren't hungry enough to eat out of the trash. But if I decided to only restrict your eating to once a day, and then half that meal in half, or put it in half, and then once a day for the next 3 or 4 months, you might become hungry enough to eat out of the trash. If I restrict your food even more, you might become hungry enough to eat worms out of the ground. So then, when somebody comes around and says, you don't need to be hungry anymore, I can help you out of this mess, will you follow them? They're exploiting your desperation. They're exploiting the weakness within your mind. Does that make sense, everyone? Does anybody else have anything to give to that? What you got?
Is it like people are so desperate that they'll do like anything and they'll blame kind of anyone in order to get out of that?
Yes. Yes. Similar to how we talked about how that guy held that gun, or held that store at gunpoint. Did I tell you guys that story? So there was a man that held a smoke shop at gunpoint a couple weeks ago. And he had the gun out, and he pointed at the guy's head, and he said, give me the money that's in the register. When he opened it up and he handed the man, I think it was $400, the man says, this isn't enough to pay for my daughter's surgery. He gave the money back and he walked out. Sometimes people will do desperate things to make sure that something they can get out of a situation. Sometimes they do desperate things to get out of a situation that is completely preventable. But that man probably couldn't afford a surgery for his daughter. So it resorted to him having to do something negative and bad, right? So think of that. To protect your family, to protect yourself, to get yourself out of a situation, you will do anything to get out of it. You might even turn a blind eye to evil in the world. You might even look the other way when somebody is doing something that they shouldn't, because at least you're better, okay? That's where selfishness and greed takes over. Okay, so does nobody have access to the internet right now? Oh, I don't even think I have access to the internet.
Yeah. Why
I
is it
have
hiding
access.
out the students?
I have access right now, and
if you have access to Google Doc, write it in Google Doc. If you don't have access, write it in Google or in your Word doc, okay? So, the rise of Hitler and the Nazi Party. This is kind of the introduction into World War II. Now, we earlier talked about Stalin in our lesson, right? And the conversation of Stalin led to the Holodomor and the atrocities that he committed himself, right? And we talked about dictatorships and the patterns that dictators present across the board. And we talked about how dictators find themselves rising into power. Well, let's talk about one of the most influential dictators of all time, and arguably the most powerful dictator of all time, Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler was born on April 20th, 1889, in Austria. He had a poor relationship with his father, who was 52 years old when he was born. And he had a great relationship with his mother, who was 28 years old when he was born. Do you see the age dynamic between the two? What's even worse is his mom and dad were second cousins.
Oh.
Ew, no wonderful.
Okay, so do you remember how we talked about kings and queens? You remember how we talked about they want to usually marry within the bloodlines? And when you marry within your bloodline, usually the individuals that are born from that bloodline find some sort of psychological issues, because that's what biology does to your brain, right? Okay? I'm not going to sit here and say that that is what the reason for Hitler being so bad is, but it definitely is probably a contributor. Would you agree? So, we learned that Stalin was a schizophrenic, right? And we learned that the psychological profiles of most dictators is extreme versions of narcissism, right? He probably suffered from that same thing. Okay? So, he was born to a mother of 28, a father of 52, and they were second cousins. His father was extremely abusive and often beat his son. He was an aspiring painter and was twice rejected by the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna. In 1903, his father passed away, and 3 years after that, he finally went away to go try to aspire to become a painter. If you look at the picture on the bottom left-hand side, that is one of the paintings that he drew. He is actually extremely talented as far as painting is concerned. There is a lot of publications that circulate the world and originals from Adolf Hitler. He was actually a really talented painter. Kind of wish he stayed in painting, don't you? Okay? So, it was at this time in 1908 that Hitler began a movement based on the beliefs that Germans were the master race. Oftentimes, guys, individuals are influenced by other people that make them come to that conclusion. Adolf Hitler in 1908 came to that conclusion all on his own. He was under the impression that German people, but not just any German people, white, tall, blonde hair, blue eyes, and Christian. He was under the impression that Germans were the master race, and it was Germany's job to exterminate everybody else. That it was Germany's job to show that they were more powerful and they were better than everybody else. So what I would like you guys to write down, I'll tell you exactly what to write down. I want you to write down the date that Hitler was born. April 20th, 1989. World War II. So Adolf Hitler was born April 20th, 1889. I want you to write down that his father was 52 and his mother was 28. And I want you to write down that they were second cousins. And I want you to write down that in 1908, he established the plan of the master race. Adolf Hitler was born April 20th, 1889. to a mother of 28, a father who's 52, and they were second cousins. And finally, in 1908, Adolf Hitler held the belief that Germans were the master race.
Isn't that called the Aryan race?
Yes, the true Aryan race, yes. 28. Mom was 28, dad was 52, second cousins. We good to go? Well, let's get going. Born on April 20th, 1889. Mother was 28. Father was 52. They were second cousins. In 1908, Hitler believed that Germans were the master race. For anybody that might not be caught up, okay, because we do need to get moving, I do provide the notes on your canvas. So if you need to go back and look at them after the fact, that's okay. Moving on. Hitler pleaded to be in the Bavarian army, which was a state in Germany. And he was finally granted his request. A little backstory on Adolf Hitler. Adolf absolutely hated school. He could not stand school. He was bullied in school, he had no friends in school, and he did not excel in school. And he never found a belonging until he joined the war effort. So Hitler joined the Bavarian army or the German army during World War I. And for the first time ever, he felt like he belonged. He served as a messenger in a regiment that exposed him to enemy fire. So do you guys remember the movie we watched in 1917? You guys remember how he ran from one side of basically the line to the other? This is exactly what Adolf Hitler did. Okay? It's exactly what Adolf Hitler did. During that time, he was not only shot in the leg, but he suffered from a poison gas attack, which blinded him for a few months. Because of his bravery, his dedication to the army, and his love for his country, he was awarded the highest medal honor in German military, called the Iron Cross. The Iron Cross is similar to the Medal of Honor that the United States Army and United States military has. Here's what I want you to write down. Hitler finally found a place that he belonged. Hitler finally found a place that he belonged. The military. Hitler finally found a place that he belonged. The military. Because he was so good in the military, or because he was such a good soldier, he was awarded the Iron Cross. So because he was such a good soldier, he was awarded the Iron Cross. One more time. Adolf Hitler finally found a place that he belonged, the military. He was such a good soldier that he was awarded the Iron Cross. Okay, somebody tell me about the Treaty of Versailles. Raise your hand. The Treaty of Versailles. Phoenix, what you got? Okay. Okay, so who was blamed for the war? Germany. Who started the war? Austria-Hungary, and what's the other country? Serbia. Who backed Serbia? Russia. So, the first three countries that joined World War I. Russia, Austria-Hungary, and Serbia. then why is Germany why are they being punished? Right? It's ridiculous that they did. So, as we look at it, they are punished for what they did in the war. As World War I is over, they signed the Treaty of Versailles, blaming them for the war and making Germany pay the winners of World War I reparations. So I want you to put this into perspective. Adolf Hitler never belongs in life. He does not find a purpose. He finally finds his purpose in the army. He loves his country, he loves his job, and he loves the military. The Treaty of Versailles takes the German military away. They blame the military for the war. How mad do you think he is? The only thing that he loved is gone now. Do you see why he probably became so aggressive? Okay. Hitler and his early politics. Hitler helped form the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or the Nazis, in 1919, and he assumed leadership in 1921. So a year after World War I ended, he joined the Nazi Party. 2 years later, he became the leader of the Nazi Party. Adolf Hitler became the leader of the Nazi Party because of his ability to speak. He was extremely proficient in communicating in front of large crowds. Whereas most people went to a rally or went to a political party to hear the people speak, he wanted to be the person to speak. And very quickly, he learned the ideals of the Nazi Party and began to communicate the ways in which it would be effective. And he was extremely effective as the political leader. In 1923, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party walked the streets, 2,000 strong, trying to overthrow the government. This attempt is called the Beer Hall Putsch. During their campaign, 16 Nazi people were killed by police officers. The Nazis found themselves scared in the roads, and they no longer wanted to overthrow the government, and many of them were put in prison. Adolf Hitler, in his failed attempt, was imprisoned for 5 years for high treason, but he was released after 9 months. Let me ask you guys a question. If there's a person that is trying to take over the government, don't you think that the government would make an example of them? Would the government make an example of Adolf Hitler? But they didn't. So, Adolf Hitler, where most people go to trial, what do? If I'm being accused of something and I'm in trial, what am I going to say? I'm not guilty. I didn't do it, right? What did Adolf Hitler do? It was me. I planned the whole thing. I believe this party is weak. I believe the Nazi Party should take over. I think our political party is better than yours. I could lead us out of the depression that we're in. I could fix all the problems in Germany. And as he's saying, I can do this and I can do that, and my party is better, were people listening? Are you sure? Okay. So as he was at the trial, and as people talked about the trial, they heard about how courageous Adolf Hitler was. They heard how brave he was. Do you remember when we talked about the psychological profiles of a dictator yesterday? Remember when one of the ways that a dictatorship is run is by the leader is looked at as a fearless, brave person with no flaws? Do you see that's how that was spun? So, Adolf Hitler was sentenced to prison for 5 years. After 9 months, Adolf Hitler got out. When you go to prison, what happens? Do you go into just a normal prison cell with a bunch of people, right? And you have to eat lunch and breakfast and dinner with everybody else? You have to shower with everybody else? And you go into, and maybe you have to work with everybody else and all that stuff? Not Adolf Hitler. He got his own prison cell. got his own prison cell because he was already powerful. He was given his own secretary during this time. And during this time, he wrote the book Mein Kampf with his secretary. Mein Kampf is known as My Struggle in German. Adolf Hitler during this time created his publication and the early groundwork that is the Nazi Party's ideology today. Paulina, what's up?
Isn't this book banned in the US?
It is not banned in the U.S. Actually, I have this book. I do. I do have this book. Huh? It is adapted to English, but yes, I have the German version too. How many copies? Huh? It's crazy.
Oh,
Crazy.
It's crazy.
Why?
it's not
It's
God.
his ideas.
It's his ideas, but
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah.
He published a book like before he did everything, right?
Well, he published the book of saying this is what the Nazi Party is about. In prison. So him and his secretary, what he did was he verbalized, this is what I want you to write in the book. This is my beliefs here. This is what I believe about this. This is what I think about this. And that secretary wrote it down. And after those 9 months, Adolf Hitler found himself out of prison with a book. What do you think during those 9 months? What was the most influential lesson learned by Adolf Hitler in his 9 months? What do you guys think? What did he learn the most? Paulina? Okay, but he knew that, and he knew he wanted power. There's something that he learned during those 9 months.
Words is everything.
Huh?
Words is everything.
Words are everything? He knew that already. Phoenix? Huh? He already knew. He doesn't care about that. What did he learn? When he got out, guys, just as a kind of fast forward future thing, when he got out of prison, in a couple of years, he was Chancellor of Germany. So in those 9 months, what did he learn that made him go so fast into becoming Chancellor? So he knew we're going in the right direction. Donovan? He knows how to manipulate the population. What does he do to do it, though? There's something different. Paulina?
He learned how,
I want to know how.
Did he learn about these words? Kind of like
Kind of.
fear.
Huh?
Fear.
He already had fear. Propaganda. We already had propaganda. Last one, and then I'll give it.
He wasn't jumping like once he learned how to lock people up and how to torture them.
No. All of those things are right, but here's the number one lesson Adolf Hitler learned. Adolf Hitler tried to become leader of the German government by overthrowing it. Didn't work. No. He went to prison. So, he learned that if he wanted to take over Germany, he needs to be elected. So he changed the way he communicates. He changed the way he talks to people. And he turns into less of a radical and more of a promiser. He becomes a great politician. He becomes a guy that says, if you elect me, I will fix this, this, and this. So he basically wants to become what he's trying to take away. And then once he becomes it, he'll take it away forever. Okay? So, Hitler wrote Mein Kampf, My Struggle, in 1925 while he was in prison. This became the Nazi ideology, and it attacked Jews, communists, democracy, and the Treaty of Versailles. Hitler also wrote that Germany needed to destroy the French nation, conquer Russia, among other things. During the distribution of this book, he sold 10 million copies. From 1925 to 1934. That's more than 1 million copies a year. So, what I want you guys to write down, that in 1925, Adolf Hitler wrote Mein Kampf. Write it down. rise to power, he found his way to the top. K-E-I-M-P-F. My struggle. So, by 1932, the Nazi Party was the biggest political party in Germany and held over 230 seats. Hitler demanded to be appointed the position of Chancellor, where at first he was initially refused, he eventually was accepted. Why do you think the president of Germany allowed Hitler to become Chancellor? Paulina? Well, so the president ran against Hitler, and the president won. His name is Hindenburg. The reason why he wanted him to become Chancellor is because every single political party and person that was Chancellor failed. Germany was notorious for having a really bad political issue when it comes to Chancellor. So, the president and his political party was under the impression that if Hitler became the Chancellor, he was going to fail, and it would destroy the Nazi Party and Adolf Hitler. Was the president right? No. He found success. Adolf Hitler demanded to be appointed position of Chancellor, and he finally was granted that position. Just before the 1933 election, Parliament was burned to the ground. During this time, the president granted the Nazi party the power to quash any political opposition. He allowed him to use his private military to attack anybody that does not agree with the Nazi Party. He granted him the power to silence anybody that disagreed with him. This is during. They just let this guy do whatever he wanted. It's almost like a gift from God. He was just constantly given this opportunity when you're like, that doesn't make any sense. Why do you want this guy to have more power? But they just kept giving him power. So, Hitler's rise to power is the Enabling Act. After the 1933 election, after the 1933 election, Hitler proposed the Enabling Act, which would essentially give him a dictatorship. And it passed. So, in the United States, there's two major political parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, right? And there is a ton of seats for election. So in order for things to be passed, they have to be passed in the Senate and the House of Representatives. If they are passed by the majority party, then they'll be implemented into laws, correct? During this time in Germany, there is more people in the Nazi Party than there are any other political party. And because of that, they are the majority, correct? So if Adolf Hitler wants something done, will they vote for it? Yes, because he is the majority political party. So, the Enabling Act banned all political parties outside of the Nazi Party and declared Germany a one-party state. Only Nazis. There is no other political party.
Can I run to the bathroom?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Jews were not allowed to hold any civil service position. They could not be a part of parliament. They could not be elected. They could not vote. And finally, all local and state governments were staffed by Nazis. They completely took over the country. Well, at the time, they believed in him. This was still the time where they go, our country sucked for so long since World War I, and Hitler is bringing us out of it. They believed in him. Give it a couple more years and they're going to start to see the terror. So, Lila.
When all this was going on right now, did he still have the plan to
Yes.
destroy all the Jews?
Yes.
But no one knew that besides him?
No.
Or was
The
it-
Nazi Party, his closest confidants knew. Yes.
Well, this was all going on. Mussolini was running all of it.
Yep. Mussolini was rising to power in Italy.
You know what the biggest stuff is?
Things like this happen all the time in other countries.
No, but do you think it can take as big an effect as it?
Russia,
Like, not like.
China, they're run by dictatorships.
No, I know that, but I'm just saying, like, to the point where, like, we have this depression.
We almost went into a depression in 2008.
But that's
An
not
economic recession in 2008 destroyed tons of people's homes. When I was in high school, Dobson High School, President Obama came to our auditorium and spoke because our area in Mesa was the #1 location in the United States for foreclosures of homes. More people lost their homes in 2008 in our community than any other place in the United States. So President Obama came here to speak about how he was going to help us. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's still amazing though.
So, what?
You didn't see it?
Oh, I saw him. No, he asked if he did it, or if he like helped us get out of it. Not really.
President.
So, yeah, there were snipers on the roof. Yeah, there were snipers on the roof.
That's how they
So, Hitler's rise to power saw him take absolute control of his political party. It saw him take absolute control of the German state. It took away all other political issues and created an opportunity. For the next week, you give it to me every day. So, now the question is, how did he go from becoming extremely powerful to the most powerful person on earth? When the president of Germany died in 1934, Hitler's cabinet passed a law proclaiming the presidency to Adolf Hitler, no longer holding elections. The president died from old age. He was about 97.
never mind. I was about to say, I was
Even if he did die, this would have all happened.
No, it would have happened. Just a little bit slower. So, Adolf Hitler becomes president without an election. First time in German history. Okay? He becomes elected the president of Germany without actually being elected. He just found his way to that position. The seat's open, I'll take it. The military swore an oath to Hitler, not to Germany. So for example, when I joined the United States Army, I stand in front, okay? I have my hand on the Bible, and I say, I swear to defend and uphold the Constitution of the United States and defeat any enemies, both foreign and domestic. I vow to fight for the United States. I did not vow to fight for the President of the United States. He is my commander-in-chief, but if he does something illegal, I do not have to follow him. I serve the United States. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so they.
Germany goes, all hail Adolf Hitler. I don't care about Germany. I care about him. Do you see how crazy that is?
Yeah.
So anything he says, they do it. And they did.
You have Hitler in there?
We sure do.
You hailing Hitler?
Hail Hitler. Hitler had obtained absolute power, and Germany became known as the Third Reich. Hitler had obtained absolute power, and Germany became known as the Third Reich.
What is that in the back?
The Third Reich is like the third coming of like the greatest military. Like we are the greatest out there.
Yeah, I would say the United
Yeah, but at the time we weren't. So, Hitler secures his absolute power. So the question is, why would you vote for Hitler? Raise your hand right now if you would vote for Hitler. You would vote for Hitler? From a German perspective, you would, right? Okay, so be in Germany right now. Be in Germany in 1934. Somebody raise your hand and tell me why you would vote for Adolf Hitler. We'll go, Daniel Boy, what you got?
You'll get us out of the depression.
He'll get you out of the depression, so you'll make money again. Austin, what you got?
The people are like oblivious. They're blind to see what like intentions are.
Okay, so basically this guy can do no wrong because he's helping us. Okay, next, what you got, Angel?
So basically, he's like helping us with like what's he useful and power.
But you don't know.
Yeah.
Why would you vote for him?
Probably because of all the promises.
Okay, that sounds good, right? The promises are good. Phoenix?
Speeches are
Okay, so every single time you listen to Adolf Hitler speak, you feel powerful. You feel ready to listen. You want what he says to happen. You want it to happen. You're motivated every single time he talks. Anyone else? Pita?
I mean, because like he's so brave, how you said, in the way that he talks, you'd be like, oh, this guy has confidence, so he's like gonna be able to take us through out of this, and we're in desperate moments that we'll do anything and bring anyone to get out of this thing.
Yeah, guys, you know what? Perception is reality. If a person is walking down the street in a suit, do you assume that he's a businessman?
Yeah.
Yes, right?
Like, so much.
If a person walks around and he looks like a hobo, do you assume he's a hobo? And perception is everything. Adolf Hitler came off as confident. He came off as powerful. He spoke with aggression. He wore his military Iron Cross. He was loud. He was aggressive. He promised things. He was everything that the German people needed at the time. But then he became more than what they needed. Does that make sense to you? Okay. True believers. Why vote for Hitler? So these people shared the same ideology as Hitler, and they believed he was their savior. Sounds very gospel-y, doesn't it? From the Depression, the Jews, the communists, and the Treaty of Versailles, everything he says they agree with. Then there's the next people, ignorance. People did not consider Hitler to be a real threat. So when he says something like, "Yeah, we need to get rid of the Jews," a lot of people are probably like, "There's no way you can get rid of all the Jews." Put your phone down. Okay. So he probably goes, or somebody goes, "There's no way he can get rid of the Jews." That's just him saying that. When he's like, "No, I mean this." Okay. And then did not take him seriously. People just thought Hitler was an odd person. Okay, they thought he was odd. Then finally, and here's the one where I think you guys can all agree with. We've spoke about this quite often. Raise your hand if neither person that was trying to become president of the United States, you felt supported you as a person. Raise your hand if you probably don't really like President Biden or President Trump. Raise your hand. Okay? But we only had two options, didn't we? Some of you are probably like, man, we need some other option, right? This is exactly what they were under the impression of as well. The Depression and the hyperinflation highlighted the need for new political relationship, okay? And political leadership. They needed somebody new because the things that were going on was not working. Do we understand? Now, the history of the swastika. The swastika was not always a negative thing. Okay? In Hinduism, it's the bottom one right there in the middle. The swastika is a religious symbol used by both Egyptians, Chinese, Roman armies, and many others. The swastika means good luck. The Nazi Party used the swastika because they felt it had connections to original caste systems that avoided racial mixing. The swastika is banned in most countries except for religious or scholarly reasons. Yes? That's happened throughout, yeah. It's conspiracy theories and stuff like, oh, they probably support this. Like, no, that's just how the building was made. No, I know, but no, that's just how the building was made. Okay? So, like, for example, guys, it's gotten to a point where Hinduism doesn't really use it. So, like, you're not going to be driving on Guadalupe and you're not going to see a Hinduism church and it's going to say, like, Hinduism for all and then the picture of the swastika. The swastika has become negative to the point where it's almost like the only thing it means now is Nazis. Right? You took away an entire religious opportunity for people. So remember how we were talking about the secret police?
Yes.
The SA, the brown shirts, or as what they were also called, stormtroopers. For any of you Star Wars nerds in here like me, okay? These guys are called the stormtroopers.
No way.
Yep. The stormtroopers were Hitler's private army. They bullied opponents into obeying the Nazi party. Yep.
Yeah.
So do you remember when the president said, hey, after they burned down Parliament, you guys can go fight anybody that doesn't believe in what we believe in? Hitler took it one step farther and said, I'm going to bully everybody into believing in the Nazi party. Once Hitler rose to power, he had the SA replaced by a new organization called the SS. Okay, the SS is the individuals who orchestrated the mass genocide of the Jewish population. They are the individuals that absolutely believed in Hitler's ideology, and they were the ones who weren't just taking words like other German soldiers were. These guys believed in what Hitler believed. They were the exceptional soldiers out of everybody else. They were the most physically fit, the most confident, the toughest, the strong, everything. And they also believed in what he believed in.
And there's,
Let me get us set back up.
and also, I think I need to have a song that would work, start with really quick.
What time do we get out of class? 21? Alright, so what I want you guys to do right now, I want you to go into your Google form that's on the canvas. And I want you to work together as groups. Okay, I want you to work in groups, and I want you guys to answer that question. Go on your Google Forms and answer the question for me.
Yeah.
Okay.